Hello, and welcome to Mechanicsburg Mystery Presents A Conversation with Joyce Tremel. Joyce is a Pittsburgh native who worked as a police secretary for 10 years and more than once envisioned the demise of certain co-workers, but settled on writing as a way to keep herself out of jail. She lives in the beautiful Laurel Highlands area east of Pittsburgh with her husband and two cats, Hops and Lager. She is the author of 3 cozy mystery series. She started with the Brewing Trouble series, of which there are 3 books set at a Pittsburgh brew pub. Then, as Joyce St. she wrote 2 books in her Homefront News series set in a small American town during World War II. And her latest is a cider house mystery series, and the first book is called Deadly to the Core and is described as perfect for fans of Amanda Flower and Julianne Lindsay. Joyce, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm somewhat familiar with Pittsburgh, but not so much with the Laurel Highlands area. Where is that, and what is it like out there?
It's about 1.5 to 2 hours east of Pittsburgh, on the Lincoln Highway, which was the major route through Pennsylvania at one point. It's our elevation here is about 2,900 feet, so we're pretty high considering it's Pennsylvania. We're near the Flight 93 Memorial, so we're 7 miles east of there. It's our lot. We live in a log home on 5 acres, and it's nice. We have our own weather zone though. It's yeah.
I'll bet whether it's what is it? Is it rainy or snowy in Pittsburgh?
Well,
is it even more snowy?
we're on a ridge, so we get a lot of fog. And in the winter, like you could drive, we're a mile off of Route 30. So you could drive out to Route 30, there could be no snow, and you get back on our dirt roads and there could be like a foot. So we get a lot of snow.
Oh, wow. That's a lot farther than I anticipated, because it's one thing to say outside of Pittsburgh, but it's when it's that far, you're really out in the boondocks, aren't you?
Sort of. I mean, it's a community that's called the community is called Folmont.
Oh,
So it's I don't even know quite how to describe it. It's like we have like a property owners association and everything, but it's rural. So
is it the kind of, it's like when I was at the Wellsboro Book Festival up in the north part of the state, and it's the kind of place that's in the hills and far away from everything. So you actually did have a real town, has its own department store, has its own hardware store, very few national restaurants. Is that sort of what it's like where you live?
It not really. I mean, it's rural, but it's not rural. Let's put it that way. We're 20 miles. We're right in the triangle between Bedford, Johnstown, and Somerset. So if you know where any of those are, we're like right in the middle.
Oh, okay. All right. I was kind of wondering, since you were setting Deadly to the Core in a small town as well, was there anything you were drawing on from where you live that you put into the town?
Not really. I mean, we go to Gettysburg probably once a year. So I wanted to set something in that area. So.
Which actually leads to the next question, which is that Deadly to the Core is set on a orchard in that area. So that's the reason why you decided to set it there?
Yeah, I mean, because you see, like Adams County, that's like the apple capital of Pennsylvania. So that it made perfect sense to set the book there.
Mm-hmm. And you've been there, so you have plenty of reference material to work with, I guess, to have a very good understanding. Ah, okay. I thought that making Kate Mulligan your protagonist, your widow, was an interesting choice. I think because especially I don't know how often I've seen that. I haven't seen it that much. And there's points in the book where she has to deal with her emotions over losing her husband. Is there a particular reason for doing this in this particular series?
I'm always looking to do something different. I mean, a lot of cozy mysteries, the protagonist either lost their boyfriend or is divorced, something like that. And I wanted Kate to be making a fresh start, but I didn't want her to be divorced or just, after a bad breakup. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. And I understand as well, because she's going to be running a cidery, which is her dream. In a previous interview, you had mentioned you were making hard cider even before you were deciding to write this. Is that?
Yeah, well, I kind of had the idea for the book at that point, and I thought I'm gonna try to make cider. So that's what happened, and it was like right before it was like October of 2019, so it was right before the pandemic hit that I started. So it really came in handy over that year. Everything was shut down, so that that was a bonus.
Mhm. Is there a steep learning curve to making cider at
No,
home?
cider's really easy. It's not like beer. Beer is more difficult. I never really got into home brewing, even though I visited a lot of breweries and hung out with brewers for my first series. Cider, you just basically you need apple juice with no preservatives in it. And I actually it's a concentrate that you mix with water. And you just need some cider yeast and put it in a jug and put an airlock on top and wait till it ferments.
Hmm. So from the start, you had no problems learning how to make cider?
No, a couple times. One time it fermented a little too much, and it had like a alcohol by volume. The ABV was closer to what a wine would be than a cider. Cider is kind of closer to what a beer is.
Hmm.
That was a little. That wasn't a good batch.
There were other characters. You have a lot of characters in your series. They run shops. They are the next door. The run the orchard next door. There was also Cherry Perry, who came on there. She kind of popped a little bit. She's the owner of the Certainty Tea Shop.
Yeah, she's like the comic relief in the
Mm-hmm.
story. I like to throw one of those, like a quirky character like that in.
Mm-hmm. Were those
Yeah.
good scenes to write when she's in? It's like, oh, I can you can just be her, let her be herself.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, she's fun to write.
mhm. You also have, let's see, there's the police chief, Scott Flowers, and you have, as a matter of fact, in the story, Kate goes to this farm. She inherits her farm from great uncle Stan and is working with the orchard manager who knew Stan, Carl Randolph, who ends up getting murdered. And she's having not only to deal with the death of her husband, she's having to
Mhm.
deal with finding his body and getting her cidery working. And it's really kind of interesting to see the community kind of come together for her, because they knew Uncle Stan.
Mhm.
Um, oh, you also have another character, Marguerite Yost, who's the owner of Margie's Morsels. It sounds like
Yeah.
there's a good budding friendship happening there. Um, when you're plotting all this out, do you have the characters first and you come up with the story, or do you
Uh,
kind of do
it
it on the way around?
it varies. Like I usually come up with the main character and then I kind of like I don't I don't like fully outline a book. I'm like a hybrid. I'm not a plotter and I'm not a pantser. I I I have like a general idea of where the story's going. I usually start with like a couple page synopsis that has just the major plot points, but a lot of times the characters take over and things go in a different direction. So I don't like stick with that plan the whole way through usually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes a character will just pop into my head, even one I hadn't planned on. Like in my first series, the Brewing Trouble Mysteries, there was a character in the third book that I had no idea where he came from. He was just all of a sudden there, like fully developed in my head anyway. And he really did a lot for the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have that weird question I had sent to you. Do your characters talk to you? And that's because it's actually my wife writes and I write, and we both have different attitudes towards our characters because she
Mhm.
has conversations with her characters, and I have to basically sit down and work. It's just a weird way of creating. I have to sit there in the moment and say, okay, what are you going to say? How do you have that with what side do you lead on?
um, I'm probably in the middle. I don't I mean, my characters don't exactly talk to me, but they'll let me know when the story isn't going the way they want it to, because that's when I get stuck. I'll be
Mm,
trying to write a scene and it just does not come together. And then if I just kind of not think about it too much and just write it, then the characters kind of lead the way.
hmm Yeah. Let's see. Are you working on the next book in the series?
I am. I don't have a contract for it yet. I'm still waiting, but I am working on that.
Ah, okay. And when you have time to read, do you have anything lately that you've been interested that you would like to recommend?
The last book I read was by a friend of mine who Liz Millarn. She actually writes a series set in the Laurel Highlands. It's Laurel Highlands Mysteries, but I haven't caught up with those, but she also writes a historical series. And her latest one is The Secrets We Keep. It's set in uh, Buffalo, New York. And that was set in 1943. And her character just became a private investigator and was looking for the parents or the mother of a child who was given away for adoption.
hmm That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is. It's really
yeah.
good.
yeah. You also wrote as Joyce St. Anthony two books in your Homefront News series. Can you
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about that? And why do you decide to do a historical set in the 1940s?
I've loved the 1940s since I was a kid. My mother would play her big band records, and I I just fell in love with that kind of music. And I like the clothes, I like the hairstyles, I like the makeup. Um, Really, there's nothing not to like about
hmm
the 40s except that we were at war. I always wanted to write something set back then, and the the character of Irene just kind of popped into my head, and I took it from there.
Well, especially because she's an editor. She takes over as editor of her father's newspaper while he
Mm-hmm.
goes off to war as a
Yes,
correspondent.
yeah,
So you have a lot of changes there, from moving to the Depression to a
yeah,
newspaper in wartime,
yeah,
especially.
and like most of the reporters at the paper, they're all men, and they've known her since she was a toddler, so they're not real keen on having this young girl be their boss. So there's a little bit of friction there.
Mhm. Moving back a little bit to, you had mentioned in an interview about reading Nancy Drew while you were growing up. Were
Mm-hmm.
there any particular books that kind of spoke to you then that said, maybe I should try this?
Not really, but I do remember my favorite Nancy Drew book, which I have no idea why it was my favorite, was The Secret of Shadow Ranch. And I don't know, it just I can always picture myself as Nancy, when I'm reading. So that's
That's useful too. Yes.
yeah.
I guess with the Hardy Boys, I would identify with either Frank or Joe, and I'm not quite
Uh-huh.
sure which one I favored the most.
Yeah, I read a lot of the Hardy Boys books too. I kind of had a crush on Frank, so
hmm Yeah, yeah. It was only a step from there to reading Ellery Queen and Nero Wolfe over at the
mhm,
at the public library, which was a godsend for me because we didn't have many books in the household growing up.
mhm. Yeah, I went from that to reading Phyllis Whitney and Victoria Holt and Mary Stewart. I always liked those books.
Yeah. So when did you get started on actually writing a story?
I'm not really even sure. I mean, I always wrote something, but I only like maybe thought of writing to try to get published, what, maybe 15, 20 years ago.
hmm
And it took, a lot of books before I actually wrote one that was publishable.
hmm Yeah. Looking back on that, is there anything that you know now that you wish you had known then that you would tell
I
yourself?
wish I would have started sooner, but yeah, it's not easy to get a book published. A lot of people think that they can, just write a book over the weekend and have it published on Monday, and it doesn't quite work that way.
Not even the writing a book over a weekend.
No.
That's for sure. I know Agatha Christie was able to do it with one of her Mary Westmacots, but that was after she had spent like 30 years writing. She knew what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
Uh, so let's see, you're working on your next book in the series, but I would also just say, take a look at Deadly at the Core. It is a cozy mystery series with a puzzle that gets solved at the end, and very unexpected twists and turns as well, because it goes from being a murder mystery to a what is going on in the background, because Kate is getting an offer for the farm, and that's part of an entirely different thread that kind of comes together at the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and let me say, thank you very much for talking with us today. And how can people reach you?
They can just go to my website. All my contact information is on there. www.joycetremel.com. Yeah, that's everything. There's a contact page. You can find me that way.
And a list of her books and where to find them.
Yeah.
So take a look at www.joycetremel.com. And Joyce, I want to thank you for talking with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Okay, absolutely. And this is Bill Peschel for Mechanicsburg Mystery Presents. And I hope that your favorite book is the one you're reading right now. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
The Mechanicsburg Mystery Presents podcast is sponsored by the Mechanicsburg Mystery Bookshop in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. The store is open with limited hours, plus we accept appointments and offer a drive-by service. The store will also ship books to your home, including those from the Peschel Press Mystery line, including our annotated editions of novels by Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers. To learn more, visit the store at www.mysterybooksonline.com. And thank you for listening.